So many times as an agent, buyers come to me, maybe they were just looking at Zillow and found a house that they really like,
Right.
and they want to go see it, and they're not necessarily ready to actually purchase a house. And so I'm always telling buyers that it's so important that they speak with a lender first before we get far into the process. And so I'm always sending people that way. And you're great. I send a lot of people your way. But I have a question. From the lender perspective, what would you think are things that the buyer needs to know before they come and talk to you?
Well, main things that they need to know, and the first thing I try to tell everybody is they need to come talk to a lender as soon as they can in the process. A lot of people think, oh, I'm not ready yet, or I don't know, and they're always worried. Nobody wants to be told no. And sometimes we may have to do some things first before you can buy, but you want to know that as soon as you can in the process, because then we can make those corrections or fix the credit or do whatever we need to do. The sooner you can buy, the better, because things just keep getting more expensive.
That is so true, and it's crazy right now. For me, as a person and as a real estate agent, I definitely see things are getting more expensive. So yes, when people come to you, I would think that there are certain questions that every buyer asks you right off the bat, and then other things that maybe they should be asking that they don't think to ask.
Sure.
And so I wonder, from your perspective, what would you say are maybe like the top 3 questions that a buyer should definitely be asking their lender the first time that they talk, or early in the process?
Yeah, well, as far as questions to ask me, make sure you're asking about closing costs and fees. I can't tell you how many times I've had somebody come to me that's already talked to somebody online or whatever, and it never even came up. They have no idea. What's the difference between the down payment and the closing costs? Because these aren't the same things. A lot of your costs and stuff will be determined not by your lender at all. Will be things that are like your title fees or the specifics of the property, like homeowner's insurance or your property taxes. But there are certain specific lender things, whether they have junk fees in there like doc prep and things, or whether it's just the standard processing and stuff, and where can that come from? Do I have to pay all that? Can a seller help? There's all answers depending on what you're doing. That's the big one, because you just need to know. There's nothing worse than being surprised later by something you didn't understand.
That is so true, and I've seen that a couple times with my buyers, and it's just heartbreaking. It's never been at the very end, but if we get to the point when they've chosen a house that they want to purchase and we're discussing making an offer, and then at that point we're discussing closing costs, and occasionally I have come to a buyer and maybe I dropped the ball discussing it before then, but we're ready to make the offer and they realize that there are more costs. These are outside of the purchase price. Above the purchase price, you also have to pay these things, but every buyer does, and it's standard and typical.
Right, and so much of the way lending's set up right now, or people don't perceive, if you're just going down to the local credit union, or if you're just online at whatever.com, all it is app takers. They're just taking in your information and saying, based off what you've said, it looks like you're pre-approved, okay, or it looks like you qualify. But they haven't verified anything yet. They haven't actually seen your income, what your assets are, or even maybe not even pulled credit. So yeah, you're pre-qualified in the standpoint of that, but they don't understand the programs. They may not even offer all the programs, let alone even getting into, well, what's the cost to you? Yeah, you qualify, but you don't have this money you need to close, and they haven't even talked about it. It happens all the time.
Exactly, and actually, when I was very, very new in real estate, this happened to one of my clients, and it was so sad. We sat down together. I sent them to a local lender. It wasn't you, but it was somebody else. And they talked to the local lender, and the local lender said they were good to go. And they told me they had excellent credit. He'd been at the same job forever. They paid everything in cash, right? And they didn't want the lender to run the credit because it was so excellent. They didn't want it to be docked when they ran it.
Right.
And this lender sent me a pre-approval letter, like they were pre-approved, but did not run the credit. And so then we got to the point of actually finding the perfect house that they wanted to buy and getting ready to make an offer on the perfect house. And it comes to find out that they didn't have any credit. And so they couldn't purchase the house.
Right.
And it was really easy. The fix of it was so simple. It just took 30 days. They had to go and get a credit card. They had to pay it off. They had to wait till it showed up. And then they did have excellent credit. But when they came to me and said they had excellent credit, they actually had no credit. There was nothing. They only paid cash. And so I think it's so important. They don't necessarily know, buyers, that they need to let the lender run their credit score so that the lender knows what they're talking about.
There's so much misinformation about how credit works and so many people are so worried about inquiries when that's the least weighted thing that can affect a score. Okay, far more, it's all driven by payment history and what type of credit you've had and how long you've had it. That's really what drives scores. If you've had derogatory things or not. So much more than an inquiry. Okay, credit reports exist to be seen. That's why they are created. Okay. Yes, it's true if you're having your credit run all the time, often for all different things, yes, that's risky behavior. Why would you be doing that? So that's why it can impact a score. But no, we need to see those reports, and if you haven't had anything opened in your name for several years, yeah, you may not have much of a score, even though you've been perfect. So, and we can help you with that, get that remedied real quick.
Yeah, it's a super quick fix, and in this story of my clients, it was really sad. They lost that perfect house, and I think it was actually 6 months or more before they found another house that fit their needs.
Right.
But in that 6 months, prices had increased, and it was a more expensive house, and it was not quite as good as the first one they wanted, and so it was so sad. So anyway, that's another reason I'm always telling people to get with experienced local lender who knows to ask for these things.
Right.
So credit score is one of them, but also when you're taking an application from people who are going to purchase, are there other things that they need to be telling you, showing you, giving you?
Absolutely. So timing is a big deal on for a lot of things when you're applying for a mortgage. Okay, one that I always try to go over with people right away. A lot of people don't realize cash and real estate aren't friends.
Yes.
Okay, this is a big deal. Money laundering rules and stuff. It affects everybody. And please, whenever a lender is asking you to document something, whether it's about your employment history or an asset, don't take it personal. It's not because we're questioning you or think you've done something bad. We, by law, have to verify these things because of the mortgage crisis that happened a dozen years ago and different things. We don't want to ask either, but we'll be required. The underwriter's going to make us prove stuff. Okay, so. Yeah, if you've got money you're saving at home in the safe and you want to use it in the real estate transaction, you've got to get that in the bank as soon as you can, and it's got a season for a time. Or we may have to look at gift funds from other members of the family or something to document. Money can't just appear that we can't trace. And unfortunately, cash isn't a traceable thing. Canceled checks, things like that are different. So that's one thing. Make sure your accounts are set up with overdraft protection so you don't show a bunch of insufficient funds if you're bouncing checks between accounts. Underwriter's going to look at that. If you're, bouncing your checking account all the time now off your rent, and now you're looking at taking on a mortgage that may be higher, they're going to question, well, if you can't handle that now, how does that look? It's not an automatic, you're going to deny your loan, but just understand, you're trying to make yourself look as lendable as possible to the underwriter, to the bank. So things like that are really important to know up front. Have access to things like your HR department, your payroll online for your W-2s, for pay stubs, or your banks. And a lot of people are really worried about online banking and have a lot of, again, with two-factor authentication and that kind of stuff now, you don't have to be doing online banking and doing things there, but you need to have access quickly, because going down to the bank, often the teller doesn't give you the right thing. We've got to have official statements. We've got to have certain things and be able to show this really came from the bank, not just a screen print or like a screen grab from your phone.
Yeah.
And so those kind of things up front are really important to understand why we're asking about that and how we need it in specific ways.
I think that's so important. And the pay stubs one, I would say for sure, I don't know if you see this a lot, but I seem to hear this story a lot when I'm talking with buyers and they're ready to purchase and we're talking about what they need to bring to the lender.
Yeah.
And maybe they have a great job, but they don't keep the pay stubs.
Yeah.
And if they don't have their own pay stubs and they have to go to HR and ask them to be printed out, if it's a small company they work for, it can actually be a really long process, because sometimes in the systems, like in QuickBooks, you have to go through each pay period individually to print the one person's pay stub. It's not easy for the payroll accountant.
Yeah, and everybody, a lot of people have direct deposit now, which is great. If you have that option, please have it that way. But because by law, they have to have those stubs and stuff some way for you. And a lot of times you never need to see them anyway, or you don't look. But make sure if you haven't ever set up that username and password, do it. Because then it's really easy. We can just log in, we can print stuff, you can just get it, download it, upload it to me, and I can help you learn how to do all that if you haven't done that before. But you can turn a real lengthy process into just a few minutes.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's so important.